A man says Boy George beat him with a metal chain as he tried to escape his apartment after a naked...
Beneath the carefree facade of rock and roll lies a darker reality. Some rock icons, drawn to the edge, pushed boundaries that led to unsettling consequences. Here are top 20 worst crimes in rock history. 20. Sid Vicious. It was love at first sight for Sid and Nancy, but little did they know their relationship wasn't going to end up well. Sid Vicious was the ultimate punk rock rebel, a brutal and vicious bassist who broke all the rules. But Sid Vicious was just a stage name for John Ritchie, a pathetic and pitiful man who couldn't handle fame and society. The mystery of the bloody night at New York's Hotel Chelsea in 1978, where Vicious stabbed his girlfriend Nancy Spungen to death, still haunts us today. Some say it was a drug dealer who did it, but that's just a lame excuse to save his reputation. The Sex Pistols' Loser was slapped with a second-degree murder charge, a crime that could have destroyed his soul. But he got lucky and was bailed out, thanks to his clueless fans and friends. Before the law could catch up with him, he overdosed on heroin, a cowardly way to escape his fate. The scandalous details of Vicious's role in Spungen's death sparked rumors and theories. Did he really do it? Or was he just a scapegoat and a victim of his own image? The missing trial left the case unsolved and the truth buried. As the punk rock fraud died prematurely, so did the chance for justice. The echoes of his chaotic existence haunt the music world, forever tainted by the mystery of whether Sid Vicious was a monster or a puppet. The unsolved questions of that awful night at Hotel Chelsea leave us outraged by the corruption of justice, fame, and the stain Sid Vicious left on punk rock.
Look at that! Here she comes.
19. Michael Todd. With Coheed and Cambria, he was the badass punk rock bassist who rocked the stage. But Michael Todd was also a desperate drug addict who pulled off a crazy stunt before a gig in 2011. He stopped by a drugstore and showed a pharmacist a cell phone note saying he had a bomb and wanted some OxyContin. Then he grabbed 6 bottles of the powerful painkiller and took a cab to the Comcast Center. But he didn't get far. The cops caught him and arrested him, ruining his chance to play with Soundgarden. What a loser. He didn't get off easy. Michael Todd got 3 years of probation and a year of house arrest. It was a shocking twist that made fans wonder how their favorite bassist turned into a drugstore thief. But that's not all. Todd's troubles continued even after his legal mess. Kicked out of the band he loved, he admitted that he ripped off his loyal fans by selling rare Coheed stuff that he didn't even have.
I wish the best for Mike, but unfortunately, I mean, I think as adults and just the human beings that we are now, we kind of need to move forward.
18. Phil Spector. Phil Spector was the genius who invented the wall of sound technique that rocked the 60s. He shaped the sound of iconic girl groups like the Ronettes and worked with the Beatles on their 1970 album Let It Be. In 1989, he earned a spot in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. But he was also a monster. At 74 years old, he shot and killed actress Lana Clarkson at his Alhambra, California home in 2003. He was convicted of second-degree murder and sentenced to 19 years to life imprisonment. He marred his musical legacy and unleashed a legal nightmare. He went from being the architect of the Wall of Sound to being locked up behind bars. With one bullet, his personal story was permanently changed. The difference between Spector's amazing achievements in music and his horrible actions leading to his imprisonment is like a Shakespearean tragedy. The Rock and Roll Hall of Famer, once praised for his creative impact on the industry, now has a place in history stained by a wicked deed that broke more than just the silence of his studio. The complex layers of Spector's life still echo, revealing the contradictions of a musical genius whose legacy is forever linked with the darkness of a fatal night in Alhambra.
But you know it's different, and you know it's important, and maybe that's what the word genius...
17. Marilyn Manson. His dark and twisted tunes shook the world, making him a legend in the industrial music genre. But Marilyn Manson was also a sick and twisted abuser who preyed on his victims, including actor Evan Rachel Wood and many others. The disturbing allegations of abuse that came out in 2021 were just the tip of the iceberg. Back in 2001, he was charged with criminal sexual assault for an incident with a security guard. The case was dropped, but it was a sign of things to come. Now, Manson is facing 5 lawsuits for abuse, including the one from Evan Rachel Wood. The results of these lawsuits are still unknown, but the damage to Manson's career is clear. In 2022, he was dumped by his record label and his talent agency, ending his dream for good. The downfall of Manson, once a star in the music industry, is a lesson in the harsh consequences of such horrible actions. The trail of controversies from the early 2000s to now has dirtied Manson's legacy, overshadowing his music. The industry that once welcomed him has now cut him off, ending his reign of terror for good. As the lawsuits continue and the truth about Manson comes out, the end of his career is final. The impact goes beyond the legal issues, darkening his artistic legacy and reminding us of the fragility of fame when faced with allegations of abuse.
To throw my face on a TV because I'm, in the end, sort of a poster boy for fear.
16. Ghul. In 1998, he became the vocalist for the black metal band Gorgoroth. He shocked the entire world with his bloody and satanic shows, featuring naked crucifixions, sheep heads impaled, and evil symbols. He was Ghul, and he was awesome. But he was also a violent and vicious criminal who attacked and tortured people. After being charged with assault in 2002, he spent 11 months behind bars. In 2005, he subjected another victim to 6 hours of torture, poured his blood into a cup, and threatened to have him drink it. He got 9 months in jail. Ghul claimed that he was the one who was attacked, causing him to punish him harshly in return. The contrast between Ghul's onstage persona and his offstage crimes added mystery to his image. Fans didn't know where the show ended and reality began. Ghul's excuses, while trying to save his reputation, only made him more mysterious. The creepy nature of Ghul's legal troubles became a backdrop to the extreme music of black metal. The difference between the artist's expression and his actions created a story that went beyond the music scene. Ghul's journey through the dark side of black metal shows the complex connection between personal actions, artistic expression, and the consequences that follow when these worlds collide.
Du utøver saker og ting med det, så. Og her må jeg jo selvfølgelig bare, må jo.
15. Varg Vikernes. Varg Vikernes was the black metal mastermind who created Burzum, one of the most influential acts in the genre. But Varg Vikernes was also a violent and vicious killer who stabbed his bandmate to death. His story of crime and chaos began with his involvement in Mayhem, the most notorious band in the Norwegian black metal scene. In 1991, disaster struck as Mayhem's lead singer killed himself. The band's guitarist, Euronymous, used the tragedy to boost Mayhem's dark and twisted image. This set the stage for more drama and bloodshed within the band. The peak of this madness happened in 1993 when Varg Vikernes stabbed Euronymous 23 times. He claimed it was self-defense, but that was a lie. He killed him out of jealousy and rivalry. The clash within Mayhem, driven by personal and artistic conflicts, ended in a brutal murder that shocked the music world. The Euronymous stabbing was a dark chapter in the history of black metal, showing the dangerous link between art and reality. By claiming self-defense, Vikernes added another layer of mystery and controversy to a story that was already overflowing with horror and scandal. The Mayhem saga is a warning about the risks of taking art to the extreme.
Varg Vikernes, født 11.2.73, dømmes til en straff av fengsel i 21.
14. Johnny Cash. Johnny Cash was the music legend who rocked the world with his songs and his social conscience. He stood up for Native Americans and their rights in the 60s, exposing horrible injustices they faced. But when it came to nature and the environment, Johnny Cash didn't give a damn. He was reckless and careless. In 1965, at the peak of his wild and drug-fueled phase, Cash took a party truck to the Las Casitas National Forest in California. The truck overheated and caught fire, setting a huge part of the forest ablaze. Cash didn't care. He said fuck it and went fishing while the fire raged on. He was a redneck Nero. The fire was a disaster for the endangered California condor, which lived in the forest. Cash's party truck killed 49 of these beautiful birds, almost wiping out the whole population. There were only 53 condors left in the forest. The California condor went extinct in the wild in 1987 thanks to Cash's stupid actions. The government sued Cash for the fire, but the man in black didn't show any remorse. He was a jerk, saying, "I don't care about your damn yellow buzzards." He had little regard for the wildlife or the environment. The artist who advocated for Native American rights was not like this guy at all. He was a hypocrite. Even our heroes have shortcomings that add character to their stories, as demonstrated by Johnny Cash's mixed legacy of good and bad. 13. Chuck Berry. Chuck Berry was the rock and roll genius who created the genre with his rhythm and blues and his showmanship. He influenced icons like Richards, Lennon, and Orbison, but he was also a sick and twisted pervert who spied on women. In the late 80s, he opened a restaurant in Missouri where he secretly filmed his chef changing and using the toilet. The cops found out and raided his home, where they found more tapes of women he filmed. More women came forward, telling their horror stories of being watched by the rock and roll pioneer. Despite his admission of guilt, he attempted to shift the blame. Although he claimed to be aware of the cameras in the restroom, he was unsure of who installed them. Yeah, right. Nobody was naive enough to fall for the lie. Because of his acts, he was forced to pay millions in settlements. Chuck Berry destroyed his musical legacy and his name. He was a phony who showed the dark side of his personality, which was nothing like the artist who shaped music. His legacy is stained by a creepy chapter that forces us to face the ugly truth that the heroes of our culture may not be as great as we think they are. 12. Rick James. Rick James, the singer, songwriter, and multi-instrumentalist, was a star and a freak. He ruled Motown in the late 70s and early 80s with his wild hair, leather jacket, tight pants, and red boots. He was a showman and a sex machine who made dirty, funky music that inspired Prince, Imagination, and the Red Hot Chili Peppers. He called his style punk funk, but he was joking. He teamed up with Eddie Murphy, the comedian turned actor, on the How Could It Be album and Party All the Time single, which hit number 2 in the US in 1985. But he spent the rest of the 80s fighting with Motown over money. He also worked with Roxanne Shanty, the sexy rapper on Lucy's Rap, which topped the R&B charts in the US. But his wonderful album, his first for Reprise in 1988, bombed. By then, his crazy lifestyle was catching up with him. Dizzy Gillespie, the jazz legend, told him to chill out, but James was too far gone. He got busted in 1991 after taking Frances Alley hostage, raping her with his girlfriend Tanya Hijazi, and setting her on fire with a crack pipe. In 1992, he was jailed once more for hitting Mary Sauger, a different woman, while under the influence of crack. Although he entered treatment in 1993, he was convicted of cocaine charges, violence, and was sent to jail. He got off some other charges. It was just 2 years that he served at Folsom State Prison, out of a total sentence of 5 years and 4 months. He got out in 1996.
Arresting development tonight for the singer Rick James. Good evening, everybody. It's now 11 o'clock. He wasn't held for long. In fact, he's out. He's free again at this hour tonight.
11. Ozzy Osbourne. After being fired from Black Sabbath for his antics, he went on to become a rock and roll legend and a global sensation with his solo career. He was the legendary Ozzy Osbourne. However, he was also a drunk and a fool who did stupid things. He was high on all the drugs in the world and didn't care. In 1982, he wandered the streets of San Antonio in one of Sharon's dresses looking for a place to pee. He found the Alamo, the sacred site where 189 Texans died fighting for their freedom. He didn't care. Ozzy peed on the cenotaph, the monument that honored their sacrifice. Luckily, he avoided being beaten up after getting caught and placed under arrest. He faced a 10-year ban from San Antonio. His fame and his career were shattered. He showed disrespect for history and the people who died for it, and was nothing like the artist who shaped rock and roll. Ozzy Osbourne's legacy is tainted by a shameful act that shows us how crazy and reckless he was.
Good evening, Ozzy.
Hello there.
How are you?
Fine.
10. Todd Harold. He was the Three Doors Down bassist who rocked the world with his music. Todd Harold played hit songs like Kryptonite and Here Without You to millions of fans. But he was also a drunk and a fool who drove under the influence. In 2 years, he did it 3 times, and the last time was fatal. He crashed into another car in Nashville, killing the driver Paul Shoulders Jr., who was only 47 years old. He faced serious charges for vehicular homicide in 2014. The cops put him under house arrest, limiting his freedom until the trial. He also faced a lawsuit from the victim's family, who sued him for wrongful death. His DUIs cost him dearly, showing the dangers of fame and the duties that come with it. He went from the stage to the courtroom, a warning to others, showing the terrible outcomes that can happen when you cross the line of responsibility. For Todd Harold, the spotlight that shone on his music talent has now turned into a spotlight on his crimes. As he deals with the consequences of his actions, his story is a sad reminder of the thin line between fame and responsibility, showing the need for those in the spotlight to live their lives with more care. He lost his band, his fans, and his stature, and he took a life that can never be replaced.
We didn't try to change up nothing or change the game up, you know. We know what works, so we went in there and just tried to write a great record.
9. Randy Blythe. The Lamb of God singer rocked the world with his metal music, but Randy Blythe was also a careless and reckless performer who caused a fatal accident. In 2010, he pushed a 19-year-old fan named Daniel Nosek off the stage in Prague, and he later died from his injuries. Blythe didn't know or care about what he did until 2 years later when he was arrested in Prague at another show. He was charged with manslaughter, putting him in the spotlight for the wrong reasons. The legal drama got worse when Blythe was locked up for 5 weeks, leaving the Lamb of God fans and bandmates in shock and worry. Blythe had to pay $400,000 in bail to get out of jail while waiting for the court's decision. He got lucky and was acquitted by the court. The court said he was morally responsible for the fan's death, but not criminally liable. He got off the hook for the trial, but not for the guilt. Blythe had to live with the consequences of his stage stunt that changed the lives of those involved forever. The trial was filmed in the movie As the Palaces Burn, directed by Don Argot, which showed the emotional and legal ordeal that Blythe and the band had to endure. The Prague incident is a warning of the unpredictable and sometimes tragic nature of live shows. Randy Blythe's journey through the legal system not only challenged the limits of artistic responsibility, but also made him think about the unexpected consequences that can happen in the wild and crazy atmosphere of a concert stage. 8. Jim Gordon. Jim Gordon was the drumming legend who rocked the world with his skills and his versatility. As a teenager, he began touring England with the Everly Brothers, and he went on to become the only living metronome by showcasing his talent on hits like These Boots Are Made for Walking by Nancy Sinatra and Imagine by John Lennon. He won a songwriting Grammy in 1993 for his part in Derek and the Dominoes' Layla, where his piano coda made the rock classic unforgettable. but he was also a sick and twisted killer who murdered his mother in 1983. He suffered from undiagnosed schizophrenia, maybe since the early 70s, and got worse with the drugs he took, hiding his weird behavior. By the late 70s, he heard voices telling him what to do and what not to do. He couldn't get enough help, even after more than 10 hospitalizations. The loudest voice he heard was his mother's, Osa Marie Gordon, who was a good parent in reality, but he imagined her as a tormentor and snapped in 1983 when he killed her with a hammer and a knife at her Hollywood home. He got 16 years to life, and his parole requests have always been rejected because he is still a danger to himself and others. Gordon ruined his life and his profession and lost his mind. He was a nice, kind, and talented musician who became a victim of his illness. But his drumming still lives on in the songs by the Beach Boys, Frank Zappa, Jackson Browne, Traffic, and Alice Cooper. The piano ending of Layla ensures that his musical legacy will last for a long time. Seven, Arthur Lee. Arthur Lee was the love leader who rocked the 60s with his music and his vision. He made hits like 7 and 7 Is, She Comes in Colors, and Alone Again, showing his musical genius. He inspired artists from UFO to Calexico, Sarah Brightman, and The Damned. He also helped The Doors get famous, convincing Electro boss Jack Holtzman to check out Jim Morrison's band in 1966, and getting Morrison's respect in return. But love's path split from The Doors as Lee's bad attitude in the crazy world of drugs and excess makes a mess of everything. While The Doors became stars, love fell apart. Band members left. Guitarist vocalist Brian McLean joined The Church. Drummer Michael Stewart changed his name to Runaway, and Johnny Eccles and Ken Forsey, lead guitarist and bass player, stupidly robbed donut stands with a water gun. By the 1990s, Lee, the core of Love, had reached an all-time low. He clashed with his ex-girlfriend and was arrested for narcotics possession. After firing a gun into the air during a confrontation with neighbors, he was sentenced to 11 years in prison for illegal firearm possession. He claimed to be innocent and placed the blame elsewhere, but it took him 6 years before the prosecutor's misconduct caused the charge of shooting the gun to be withdrawn. In 2001, he served out his possession sentence and was released. He tried to make a comeback, touring with A New Love featuring Johnny Eccles, but he died of leukemia in 2006. Despite his rough later years, Arthur Lee's impact on music lives on. Love's third album, Forever Changes, is one of the greatest rock albums of the 20th century, and The Doors are still in demand. The music of Arthur Lee is evident in his legacy, but so is the skill and years he wasted.
Whatever they say, it's all about money. And for you people to vote for people.
6. James Brown. James Brown was the sole godfather who rocked the world with his music and his energy. He created funk and left a mark on 20th century music with his amazing live shows. But he was also a wild and troubled man who had a crazy incident in 1988. It started when some insurance agents sneaked into his office to use the bathroom. He got mad and pulled out a shotgun, though he denied threatening anyone with it. The cops were called. He took off in his pickup truck, speeding across state lines and trying to hit police cars. The cops shot his tires, but he kept driving on the rims for miles. He was caught and got 6 years in prison for not stopping for the police, but he got away with the other charges, like assault with deadly intent. He had a lot of legal problems, mostly because of his drug use. In 1998, he had another car chase and he got 90 days of rehab. But he still kept his fame and status. He got a Lifetime Achievement Grammy in 1992, the Kennedy Center honors in 2003, and he toured until he died at 73 in 2006.
This is a man's world. Wow.
5. Tim Lambesis. Tim Lambesis, the lead singer of As I Lay Dying, a Christian metalcore band, was a hypocrite and a murderer. In 2013, he tried to hire a hitman to kill his wife, who had the audacity to divorce him. He was caught red-handed by an undercover cop who exposed his evil plot to the world. How could a man who sang about God and love be so heartless and cruel? Lambesis had a lame excuse for his wickedness. He blamed it on steroids. He said the drugs messed up his mind and made him do things he regretted. But that's no justification for breaking the most basic rule of Christianity: thou shalt not kill. Lambesis betrayed his fans, his bandmates, and his faith. He was a fraud and a phony. For his crime, he should have been left to rot in jail, yet he was spared. After serving just 3 years of his 6-year term, he was released on parole. He didn't even offer an apology to his kids or wife. Seemingly unaffected, he attempted to bring his musical career back to existence. He had no shame, no remorse, no conscience. Lambesis' case showed the dark side of the Christian music industry, where fame and money can corrupt even the most devout. He also raised questions about the role of steroids in the metal scene and how they can affect the mental health of musicians. His story was a tragedy and a scandal, and it tarnished the popularity of As I Lay Dying and the whole genre.
Allegations are no laughing matter. The rocker who sang about his Christian faith could now face 9 years in prison.
4. Boy George. Boy George, the 80s pop star and leader of the Culture Club, was a freak and a monster. In 2008, he lured a young escort, Auden Carlson, to his home with the promise of a photo shoot. But instead of a camera, he had whips and chains. He tied up Carlson and threatened to hurt him, saying he deserved to be punished. He was a sadist and a lunatic. Carlson managed to escape using a hook he ripped from the wall. He ran for his life, leaving behind a nightmare, and he exposed Boy George's twisted side, which was nothing like the colorful and cheerful image he had as a pop icon. He was a liar and a deceiver. Boy George faced the court for his crime and was given a slap on the wrist. He was sentenced to 15 months in prison, but he only served 4. He was released on a curfew and he acted like nothing happened. Carlson never got an apology. Neither did Boy George's fans. What a jerk and a coward he was. He showed the dark side of the pop industry, where fame and money can make people lose their minds. In addition, he also raised questions about the role of sex and violence in the music scene and how they can affect the lives of artists. His story was a scandal and a horror, and it haunted the memory of Boy George and the Culture Club.
Was convicted of falsely imprisoning a male escort. A man says Boy George beat him with a metal chain as he tried to escape his...
3. Ian Watkins. The frontman and creator of the Welsh rock group Lost Prophets, Ian Watkins, was also a pedophile and a predator. He used his fame and power to lure and abuse his young female fans and their children. Even a 1-year-old baby girl was to be the victim of his intended rape. He was a sick and twisted man who had no morals or conscience. But in 2012, his evil deeds came to light when 2 brave women came forward and reported him to the police. They were the mothers of the children he had abused, and they had been manipulated by him into participating in his depraved acts. Photos, videos, and messages were handed over to the authorities as evidence of his crimes. Watkins, who was 37 at the time, was arrested and charged with possession of child pornography and an extreme depiction of bestiality. He initially denied the charges, but later pleaded guilty to 13 child sex offenses, including the attempted rape of a baby. Watkins faced the court for his crimes and got what he deserved. He was sentenced to 29 years in prison and 6 years on extended license, meaning he would have to serve at least 20 years before being eligible for parole. Along with paying £120,000 in legal fees, he was also mandated to register as a lifelong sex offender. He shocked and disgusted the world, and especially his fans, who had admired him as a musician and a role model. He exposed the negative aspects of the rock and roll culture, ruining both his life and growth. Ian Watkins and Lost Prophets' memories were stained by his horrific and shameful story. Ian Watkins was a monster and a shame, and he should never be forgotten.
There is no doubt in my mind that Ian Watkins has exploited his celebrity status in order to abuse young children.
2. R.L. Burnside. The Mississippi bluesman Robert Lee Burnside was both a hero and a killer. He learned to play guitar by watching others, especially Mississippi Fred McDowell. In the late 40s, he moved to Chicago, where electric blues was booming, but he couldn't stay away from his home state, where violence and death haunted his family. He did as well, shooting a man to death, whether by land or by dice, not sure. It was between him and the Lord, him dying. I just shot him in the head, he informed the judge. He was released from prison and returned to farming and fishing until the 1990s. That's when Fat Possum Records discovered him and made him a star. He worked with Kid Rock and John Spencer and made a bunch of albums that made him rich and famous until he died in 2005. Burnside's story is a tribute to the Mississippi Blues, showing a man who came from the dark side of the law and wound up on the bright side of the music. He got his recognition late, but he proved that true talent, even when hidden by time, can come out and shine in the history of music. But his story is also a warning to the music industry, showing how fame and fortune can come at a high price. He struggled with alcohol and drugs, and he lost many of his friends and family to violence or disease. He suffered from chronic pain and depression, and he never fully recovered from his guilt and trauma. He was a legend and a loner, and he died with many regrets and unresolved issues. 1. Vince Neil. Vince Neil, the Motley Crue singer, was a drunk and a killer. He crashed his car into another one, injuring the people inside and killing his friend Nicholas Razzle Dingley, the drummer of Hanoi Rocks. He was charged with manslaughter and DUI, and he deserved to rot in jail, but he got off easy. His sentence of 30 days in prison was shortened to 15. In addition, he received community service, probation, and a fine. But that was nothing compared to the damage he did. He was a jerk and a criminal. Hanoi Rocks lost their friend and bandmate, but Neil never apologized to them. The singer didn't care about them or anyone else, and he even made fun of them by naming his box set Music to Crash Your Car To. Vince Neil was a fool and a bully. Neither he nor anyone else ever forgot what he had done. He lost everything to the dark side of the rock and roll lifestyle. In addition, he raised questions about the role of alcohol and drugs in the music scene and how they can affect the lives of musicians. His story was a horror and a shame, and it forever marked the memory of Vince Neil and Motley Crue. He was a disgrace and a failure, and he should never be forgiven. But Neil's story is also a lesson to the rock and roll fans, showing how fame and fortune can come with a high cost. He lost his friend and his freedom, and he faced the wrath of the public and the media. Guilt hounded him, and he struggled with addiction. Peace or happiness was elusive. Vince Neil was a caution and a warning, and should never be admired.
We're going to ask the count to be dismissed by Mr. Neil is going to be required to attend and complete the DUI school
And that's it for the top 20 worst crimes in rock history. Which one shocked you the most? Comment down below. Thanks for watching.